Even though the action's still taking place back there, just some early takeaways on day one.
So what makes the Elite 11 Finals special is we've seen a lot of these kids at the regionals, but the regionals don't always have all the best players because it's not the finals. Everybody who makes the finals is somebody who came and balled out at one of the regionals. And it is special to see him walk in to the hotel and out here on this field because now you're comparing elite against elite players. And you start to pick up on different physical differences, right? You see, hey, okay, this kid's actually a little bit taller than I realized. Or maybe this guy is a little bit broader than I realized. Or, ooh, I don't love this guy's motion, but this guy has a pretty pure stroke, and there's a lot of RPM coming out of his hands. You combine that with the chance to see these former great NFL quarterbacks we have out here and some of the current college stars. It's a pretty special experience.
One of the things that's noticeable as you start to look at some of the names out here, two names that aren't out here, Nika Iamaleava and also Arch Manning. And a lot of folks would look at that and they would say, oh, that's too bad. I can assure you, and I think you would say the same thing, there are a lot of names behind us right now that say, good, because that number one spot's not locked up yet, and it's a conversation we've had all week, and it remains ongoing. So let's talk about that. Number one, impact of those two guys not being here, and number two, is that race for the top spot locked up, or is it more wide open than perceived?
It's certainly not locked up yet. I was talking to Steve Wiltfong. I was talking to Chris Singletary on our rankings committee. Look, Arch Manning is the number one prospect in the country for good reason, but it's not number one with a bullet. If Nico was here, obviously he'd have a chance, but Malachi was great today. Dante Moore out there. There's a lot of names that could make big moves in our rankings.
Okay, so we're talking about Arch Manning there. We got a lot of guys on the field behind us. We have got a lot more intense competition coming up over the next couple of days. So far, through day one drills, who's caught your eye?
I'm going to start with Dante Moore. Obviously, uncommitted out of Detroit would be a big loss if Michigan can't get him. We think Oregon's doing a great job on him right now, but it's a smooth, compact stroke. The footwork's good. He has a nice, solid build. There's a lot of RPM coming off his hands. I watched him throw next to some of the college counselors, Devin Leary, C.J. Stroud, and you really don't notice that much of a difference. And that really says something because those guys have been in college training programs for 3 or 4 years now. He's kind of my top guy that I saw here today as far as being better, than I realized he was. I've seen him before, but I live in Florida, so I don't see him all the time, and he really popped for me.
Yeah. Guys, if you are a college football fan, this is the center of the CFB universe right now. We're going to have plenty more coverage on the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel right now until tomorrow, where we'll have more here from L.A. Back to you, Jim.
Okay. Right, keep going.
All right, now we continue our coverage here from Los Angeles, California. We've got the Elite 11 ongoing. Bud, there's a lot more to come, obviously. This is kind of like a breaking in of sorts, and you've been at many of these events. So just let's continue talking about some early takeaways, and then we'll dive into some specific guys.
Sure, it's great to be on CBS Sports HQ. Now we continue on YouTube. Dante Moore, we just got done talking about, looking really nice out here. Another guy I want to talk about, and this is really no surprise because he is high in our rankings, but I don't get to see him all the time. And I feel like we almost forget about him sometimes because he has been rated so highly for so long, and that's Malachi Nelson, the USC commit, Lincoln Riley's prize recruit out there. Man, he is smooth. He has a clean delivery. He's obviously very athletic, nice tall frame. You see he can put on some more weight, but already he looks like he belongs out here. He's certainly in the conversation to be that number one overall quarterback like we just finished discussing. I thought Brock Glenn, by the way, an uncommitted player who a lot of our guys saw at the Nashville Elite 11 Regional. Again, nice compact stroke. There's not a lot of wasted motion in the delivery. A developed lower body, a very athletic prospect, and a guy who is getting a lot of love from the top colleges out there right now, Josh.
It's interesting. You have to deal with so much mentally if you're a player here. It's the first time that you've been able to compete with guys that are roughly your equal. They're also changing elements. We got here today, and it was short sleeve weather. It is anything but that now. But continue to talk about, like, eyeball test, because we see height, we see weight, we see pictures of kids, and we see them play against their high school competition. But now we finally get to see them against other guys that we have, similarly rated. So eyeball test day one, what did you learn?
All right, walking into the hotel ballroom, Pop Free was Chris Vizina, the Clemson commit. I think Clemson, they did miss on Arch Manning, but they got out of that Arch Manning race pretty early, and they focused in on Vizina. They said, this guy is not a bad consolation prize to Arch Manning. He comes in, he pops, he's got a big frame, he has a really live arm. I think Clemson's going to be extremely happy to have him in the fold. That's a big get for them after seeing him in person more. He certainly popped. There's a lot a lot of really tall kids out here this year. We don't have a whole lot of short guys. And a lot of dudes move through drills as well. I looked at Chris Parson, not the tallest guy here, but does move through the drills pretty well, show good footwork. Stokes, obviously, who played for Tim Tebow's high school there in Florida by me, showcasing his kind of funky, multi-level delivery, I think we can call it. He can deliver the ball from a lot of different arm angles. There's quite a few prospects out here that are popping for me.
It's one of my favorite aspects of this every year is looking at how people feel coming into the event. And then you start to see day one, day two, and inevitably you get the biggest risers. And we don't want to focus on losers so much, but biggest risers. We're not at that stage of Elite 11. Obviously tomorrow the competition really ramps up, and then the subsequent day as well. So not so much who has been a big riser so far, but who are some names that you've circled as saying, I think that guy can make a move this week?
How about two names that I would say I get it, right? We have seen increased college interest in these two guys, Brock Glenn and then Austin Novosad, the Baylor commit, and Brock Glenn, who is currently uncommitted. And I'll throw you a third, Ricky Collins as well, who's committed to Purdue. All three of these guys are picking up a lot of interest over the last month from schools that aren't necessarily better than where they're committed to if they are committed, but certainly are maybe more successful in recent years. Austin Novosad has a live arm, a really wiry build, but not too skinny. You can tell he has room to put on more weight. I think Ricky Collins has an interesting delivery, but the ball pops off his hand. An athletic kid as well out here. I've been to Elite 11 finals that don't feel quite as good as some other ones, and I've been at ones where you had Justin Fields battling Trevor Lawrence and several other future NFL guys right below them. This is a very loaded event.
It's really interesting that you mentioned that because it's something I wanted to ask you about. You've covered this event multiple times, and you've seen some classics. I mean, we could do like an entire documentary right here live about that group that came through here a few years ago. Well, some of those guys are either back here now or you've now got some comparable data points historically. What's it like seeing some of these guys come back here now and juxtaposing that to what you learned from them, what you thought about them when you first saw them in this setting?
Well, first of all, they are all thicker, right? There's no doubt. As we get older, we get thicker. But Dorian Thompson-Robinson, much bigger than when I saw him in high school. Devin Leary, C.J. Stroud, and also Caleb Williams, who was here, Bryce Young, to arrive on Wednesday morning. The ball, they have more velo than they used to, and they're more confident. It's a good reminder that even though these guys are the best of the best high school prospects right now out here, a lot of these drills are still new to them. They haven't necessarily worked with all of these coaches out here. They're learning new things, and so it's a great evaluation point for us. But at the same time, you don't want to be too harsh on a kid for how he does out here, because a lot of the times maybe they're a 2-sport guy or a 3-sport guy, and they don't do quite as much private quarterback training. So I look for more of the upside out here and try to look for a few things that maybe you could nitpick later. But there's no doubt why Devin Leary is so high on these draft boards. To get back to the college thing, he ripped it through a lot of wind, like we're shaking right now under the desk. When he was here in high school, he still has that velo. A lot of RPMs on his ball. There's a reason he was 35 touchdowns and 3 picks last year for NC State. C.J. Stroud, you can see why he's in the conversation for the number 1 pick with that build and that velocity. And honestly, DTR is throwing the ball a lot better than I remember him doing so in high school. And, Caleb Williams is not bad. I was chatting those guys up earlier. It was great to see them. Obviously, remember, Devin Leary was supposed to face DTR in that canceled Holiday Bowl, so they got to chat a little bit about how their feelings there on that canceled game. I think Devin would like to stay in San Diego a little bit longer, especially when the weather was nice. It's pretty special to see those guys come back, and Elite 11 just has such great fraternity. 13 of the 14 most recent Heisman winners at the quarterback position played at Elite 11. It's pretty nice.
We were walking around before the event started, talking to some of the counselors, some of the coaches, some of the players, and you get a lot of feedback that maybe you wouldn't necessarily share on air, but you can use it to formulate your opinion. When guys walk in here, some of them are well seasoned in the camp circuit, and some of them it's really wide, starry-eyed, and maybe not the first time in a camp setting, but first time in this kind of environment.
Sure.
How much adjustment does it take to step onto a stage like this? Because even amongst the 7-on-7, even amongst the camp circuits, this one really stands out. And this one is world famous for the competition level that we're about to see unfold over the next 2 days. So some of the feedback you get sometimes post Elite 11, how much adjustment is about to happen for some of these guys?
I think there is a pretty good adjustment that happens at Elite 11, but there's also stuff that's happening here that you don't see, right? You get to see Yogi Roth about what it means to play the quarterback position. You're talking a lot behind the scenes of being a leader in your community, leading others on your team. They also do a lot of the spatial training and the mental toughness training behind the scenes that you may not get to see out here on the field. But eventually, everybody here is an alpha, and they are just going to settle in and play. It may not happen on night one. They may be too focused on doing the drill the right way or trying to be too tactically perfect. But look, once they get on that day 3, once this goes from more of a camp to a competition, it becomes more of a competition, as they like to call it. Everybody's just playing to their fundamentals, to their instincts, and you're really going to see some great competition out here. I think if you get invited to this, you can settle in eventually.
Yeah. It was really interesting also when we were in the hotel earlier. We're staying at the same hotel that the players are checking in at, and you see the camaraderie, and you see the interaction, and then you see some guys walk in, and it's cordial, but it's more like a business trip. It's more like maybe their dad would look when their dad shows up to a hotel. But it's so interesting, like that juxtaposition of one mentality versus the next mentality. But at the same time, talking to Yogi earlier, we're talking to a bunch of guys out there. Everybody just straps in. Doesn't matter how you show up and I show up. Everybody's about to strap in, which brings me to my next point, and that's, did you arrive in L.A. with any guy in your mind that you viewed as leader in the clubhouse until proven otherwise?
I think it's got to be Malachi, right? He's so proven, he's so productive at the college or at the high school level. We know he has the tools. I think in a lot of other years, if Arch Manning wasn't the guy, which he's obviously the guy for right now, that would be really one of the top guys to talk about. But there are a lot of guys here who could emerge. In some years, we probably only have 2 or 3 guys who really could. But now I think we have probably 3 or 4. Dante Moore, as I mentioned, and there's some guys who are emerging late, and I think they have a chance, like Brock Glenn or Novosad, maybe an Eli Holstein. You could see. The kid committed to Oklahoma. Now I'm blanking on air. This is great. He probably has the strongest arm here, though.
He had a cannon.
Really rips it. That was pretty impressive out there.
Obviously, the next 2 nights we'll have a whole lot more in terms of winners, losers. We'll have guys making legitimate moves. Right now it's just kind of a breaking in period. The 24/7 Sports YouTube channel is where you want to be. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't already. In the meantime, we will wrap it up from here in LA, and we will be back here tomorrow night. Appreciate you guys watching.